Welcome to the first step of your journey of making amazing macros super easy. I'm here to help you get started with learning the new macro creator without much hassle. If you want to learn about some more things in more detail, I also have text-based tutorials built into the new macro creator that take you to a Notion page. I'm also planning on updating those with some actual videos here in the future. But quickly, let me show you how to use the new macro creator. So we just finished up a really cool macro. Let's say we have our macro right here, which for us is a character rigger. If we move any of these, which let's find body. If we were to move the body, for example, we can see the entire top part of our body moves. If we were to just move the upper left arm, we'll see that the entire arm moves. But then if we were to move the lower left arm, we can see that only the bottom section moves. This is super cool, super easy to set up. How do we turn this into a macro? To get started, using the new macro creator, we have inputs. All of these are going to be unique inputs that the user needs to give make this work. So if we were to preview these, we can see this is going to be the lower left leg, this is the upper left leg, and then the right. We need to have these as inputs for the user to actually connect into. So for this, we want to make this a fusion node. So we have to know what we want it to be first. This is going to be designed to be used in Fusion, not on the edit page. So we know that we're going to be able to be adding in inputs for the user to connect to. So what we have to do to make this super easy on us, disconnect all of our body parts for right now. And in their places, I'm going to actually be putting in a media in node. You don't have to actually put anything in this media in node, but we just have to type in media in, and then we brought up this menu with shift space, and this is going to give us a red error. This is fine, don't worry. Let's just do this for all of these. Make sure they all connect into the green inputs if you're doing it in my setup like this. Basically, just make sure that they connect to the correct inputs. So we have that all set up now. We can go ahead and add what's going to be called a controls node. It's basically whatever node you want to be a node that's going to get every user control that you make with the new macro creator. So you can make labels, buttons, checkboxes, you can add images into the controls, you can do a bunch of cool things, but you have to have a node to put them all on. If you don't know, the alpha divide node is basically just a blank node with only the settings page. We can then make this pass through so it doesn't take up any processing power, and we'll just change the name to controls. It also lets the user know, hey, this isn't meant to be anything, if the user ever goes digging into your macro. What we can do now is select all of our nodes. The order of your selection does not have any bearing on the ending output of the macro. And then we want to select our controls node again to make it red. This is going to make it the active node. Now we can come up to Workspace, come down here to Script, find Fusion's Pixel Studio, the new macro creator, wait for it to load, it can take a second. Now you're able to bring in all of your controls. If we look, we have all of the tools. These give us the actual nodes and any modifiers on the nodes. So we might see that some of these look like modifiers, some of these look like nodes, but we can also see all of the names of the nodes pass into here. So if you have any special names, like all of these saying where the inputs are, then it really helps you find them. If we look right here in the center, we have main inputs. This is all the stuff that is going to actually create those triangles on your nodes. So anything that's selected with a checkbox and in green will be a triangle. And if we see, we have lower left, I'm assuming either leg or arm, and the foreground is selected. If we look, anything that says lower left should have the foreground selected. That's perfect. And if we scroll through, we can see all of these inputs that have the media in connected into them are selected, including our pipe. This pipe right here is made if you hold down Alt and click on a router or on a pipe, it'll create a pipe router and you're able to split into like a 90-degree angle. So this now is the main input for the body, which is just fine. It's just the same as having a regular node there. And we also can see, even though we didn't do anything special for the media out, we can still find an output. We can still find an output select, this output is connected to a media out node, which means the logic dictates this is what you want to be the final output of the node. So it's going to automatically assume that, and it's going to select that node for you. All right. Now let's start adding some controls in here. We want to make this a little fancier. We don't just want to dump all these controls in here with no rhyme or reason. Let's make pages, labels, and set this up correctly. So first off, let's make a page. Let's come up here to add and go down here to tab. I call them pages. They're also called tabs very often. In the code, they're more oftenly called pages. We can come in here and give this tab a name. We're just going to call this transform. because this is where we're actually going to put this transform node's controls, just so it's really easy to manipulate where the body is. We're going to go ahead and choose an icon. Since this is in Fusion, it's really nice to have an icon in there because it helps dictate what each page is for. We can choose icon and choose the transform button right here, and if we hover over it, it also tells us the names of whatever these icons are. But if we select it, it's going to store that information, and we can also give it a tooltip. So we can give this tooltip, say, full body transform. Sounds good to me. We're also going to check this checkbox right here to remove the settings tab. Let me explain what this means. If you're not too familiar with macros, let me explain this. Macros by default are forced to have a controls page if there's any controls on it, and a settings page, which is just the same thing as having this on our controls node. We can get rid of both of those really easily with the new macro creator. If you just want to get rid of the settings page, check this box, and every time you reopen this window, and every time you export this from this comp, that settings page will no longer be exported with your macro. And if you want to get rid of the controls page, all you have to do is add a page or a tab in one of these first 3 slots in this preview, and that will get rid of the controls page entirely. Super easy, don't have to worry about a thing. If we just press add now, we know in our heart of hearts that the controls page and settings page are both gone. Now let's make a label for the transform controls. Come up to here to add, coming down here to label, and we can do a bunch of crazy stuff with this. Let's just set this label name to be transform. We're not going to go too fancy with whatever we're going to name it. And we can also style this with HTML. I recommend typing in the name first because I will just automatically format the HTML around your text. So we type in our name and we can just press bold and it's going to make it bold. We also see a nice preview of whatever it's going to look like right down here. We can then press on the color option over here and choose whatever color with our preview up in the top right of this window. And we're just going to choose maybe a nice green, just like that. Let's press OK. And we even see the color preview right there. We're going to make this label a nest because we're going to hide the controls by just collapsing the nest name. And we're going to, by default, just hide 5. This is a good general idea of what we're going to be hiding. It doesn't have to be exact for right now because we're just kind of estimating. But 5 is a good middle ground. We can keep it visible. This is going to make sure that the label itself and the controls that are inside of it are hidden whenever the label is closed. But when the label is open, the controls will be visible, but the label will not, which means you're able to easily hide and show controls this way with buttons and other stuff, which we can learn about in my macro series, which I'll link also down below. But we'll keep it visible for now and just press add. Really cool. I'm also quickly going to come into default and change the 0 to a 1. The 0 basically means that the label is closed, and the 1 means the label is open. So by default, we want this label for when the user goes to open the macro, we want it to be open. All right, really cool. Let's look for the node name. We can see it's just XF down here. If we come up to this search, we can type in XF full caps and it brings in the node. Click on that and we can also bring in all of the controls, which are beautifully labeled with what they are. These labels correspond with the colors that are going to be showing up over here in the macro preview. So we can see everything that's with this yellow. This is a page. Everything that's with this kind of bluish kind of color, this is going to be a label, etc., etc. And you find a lot of these all throughout all of your nodes. So it really helps you figure out where things are. So what we can do is we can see this is a nest. We don't have to grab this, but let's come down in here to center and we're probably going to end down on edges. So we can double click and add these one by one, or you can single click and a shift click down to one. And to this, you can do bulk add. This then will add all of those all at the same time, but you can also click once and drag, and that will select multiple as well. We want to just add 5 more to this, so we have 5 here, 6, 7, 8. And we can do that, and bam, it even updates it for us. And we can hide and show these controls just like we can in the inspector when this macro is done. I will warn you, please make sure for now, when you go to export your macro, all of these are open. If any of these are closed, the controls within them won't export. That's all we want to have on this page. Let's go ahead and come up here and add another tab for another page. Let's go ahead and call this one body parts. So we're going to give the user control over where the joint is, which is just the anchor point of the node. And then we're also going to give them control of the angle of the transform node. So it's really easy to allow them to just customize where their body parts are. I'm going to set the icon to be this cool one down here with the the white misty ghosty kind of fella on the darker background. I feel like it has a nice contrast, really stands out. And then we'll also just add, I think we won't add any tooltips to this one. And then we can see, because we had this checked last time, removing settings is still the option that is set. And we want that to stay that way, so we can press add. And now let's start adding in more labels and more controls. We're going to start with the lower left leg. And we're going to add, I'm going to add 4 because I know for a fact that this is going to be 4. So we're going to just add 4 controls. And we're not going to stylize these because these are all going to look the same. So there's no need to try to estimate the color. Let's go ahead and press add, and we'll make sure this is open, just the same. And let's go ahead and come into here, and we're going to look for the correct names. And as we can see, I did label all of these transform nodes with the correct thing. So what I'm going to do is just type in leg, and that's going to give me all of the legs. And we can see right here, we have lower left leg. We click this, we come down here. We actually want to change this. This is my bad. I meant to change this and to say something else. We want this to just be left leg, not lower left leg. And we can change this really nicely in here. And this will actually just make a new label when we go to exports. It will update and actually just allow you to use this. We want to come down here on the node and find pivot. This is our anchor point for the node. We want to just double click this to add it. And then find our angle and double click this one as well. We're going to change pivot to say a lower joint because we're going to be using the lower ones first. And then this is also then going to be lower angle. And then we just want to add in the stuff for upper as well. So we're going to add in upper leg, find the stuff for this, find pivot, find angle, and just rename these as such. So upper joint and upper angle. And there you go. And we can do this for all the different body parts, and I'll be right back with that. And all right, there we go. There's all of our labels and controls set really easily right here in the new macro creator. If we look at our comp, we may see some stuff looks a little bit different. This is because this is actually a reopened macro. This is the macro that is actually uploaded to Reactor, because Flow Character Rigger is actually an official Reactor product you can go download for free from Reactor and use this in any of your projects. It is really easy, really nicely set up. I have some more information about it on there and also on a We Suck Less forum post. And now we have everything set up. We have all of our inputs set, we have our output set, we have our controls in here. What we have to do now is come up here, make sure that everything is still selected, or make sure our controls node is still selected in red. Come up here and we can come and do either save macro to clipboard for just some testing, or we can come up here and export macro as. This is where we're able to set the input names, output names, and other information about the macro that we're saving. So really quick, I'm just going to translate these into easier to read input names. So give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Super easy. All you have to do is just double click on these and you can change the names. And I just have these super easy to understand. They're just laid out really simply. We can come up here and we can change either the name. This name will just come from this up here. And we can choose a thumbnail for this macro if we have one. And we can also export any loaders images if we have any loaders in here. We don't have any loaders, we can keep that off. We can also export a README file to explain what to do with this macro file after you've exported it. And if you've exported a DRFX, it explains what to do with the folders it exports, because update, by the way, if you didn't know, this does not actually export a zipped.drfx file. This will give you the folders for you to edit, manipulate however you need, and then you can zip them up later yourself. The reason is a little complicated to explain, but just know that I am working on hopefully finding a solution to actually make .drfx files. We can also change our macro from a macro operator to a group operator from just this checkbox right here. And we can also save all of our starred options as the new defaults for the next time we open this. Now, why do we have this if the only two options that this looks like it relates to are these two? That's because there are two hidden options. If we come up here and check DRFX, that'll actually reveal a bunch of new options for us. We can choose the type if it's made for Fusion, the edit page, or both. We can choose what type of macro it's for, so either if it's a searchable macro to be searched with a shift space, if it's for the effects panel, which can be found up here with a search, or if it's made for both, so you'll be wanting to install it in both places. If you switch this over to edit, It's actually going to change these options out for the edit page options that you'd see traditionally. So transitions, titles, generators, and effects. If you want both, it'll take you to the edit page options. You can just choose whichever one you want. It will export an edit folder and a Fusion folder, because that's how you would create a DRFX for an effects panel Fusion page macro, if you followed that. You can then change our company or author name. I like to use my company name, so Fusion Pixel Studio, and we can change this to be whatever we want. So we can just say example. I'm going to go and change this to whatever we actually need it to be. So we're going to make this both, because I want it to be found in shift space and in the effects panel, just depending on however the user wants to do it. And we can also choose a thumbnail, but I don't have a thumbnail for this, so we'll just leave that be. And I will be exporting a README file just to show it to you. So we can see we have all the inputs, we have the outputs, we have the name, we have all of our information that we want to save. Cool. Let's go ahead and do export to. We'll see some flashing. This is it updating the labels. And then we can come into here and choose wherever we want to save this. By default, it'll bring you into the templates folder because it doesn't know if you want it to be a regular plain macro or a DRFX. I have a folder in my documents just for my macros. I'm going to make a new folder in here just for quick start guide, and we're going to export the macro into this folder. And this is where the folder is going to be going and the .readme file. And then the contents of everything is going to be stored within the DRFX folder structure. And you'll see that here right as I press save. We'll get a nice pop-up telling us that it's done. And it also tells us when it's closing. Really nice. I'm going to go ahead and minimize both of these windows, and we're going to open up a new Fusion comp. All right, we're in a new Fusion comp, and here is our quick start guide folder. Let's go into here, and we can see we have a README file, which just tells us where you want to zip up the Fusion folder. And since we also want this to be a macro that's able to be searched for with the shift space, we also tell the user to place it into the macros folder, which is how you get that to happen. Since there's no way to automatically do this with a DRFX file, we just have to tell the user how to do that themselves. Now, there are ways around this, and we can talk about this another day, but there are ways to make installers for files like this. We also then have this Fusion folder. If we go into here, we have our company folder, and then into here, we have the product other folder that we selected, and then in here is where the actual files go. So if you have a thumbnail, this is where it's going to go, and if you have loader images, this is where they're going to go as well. And if you have a loader image, it's going to export the loader image into this folder and change the loader inside the macro to look for the image inside of this folder. So to make this into a DRFX, to install it into my effects library, we just have to right click, and in my case, I have 7-zip, but if you don't have it, just use the regular old compressor on your computer. But 7-zip, add to archive, keep these settings. If you don't have these settings, make sure it's set up similar, and then we can change the name. Let's just change this to say quick start guide, and then we'll do .drfx. And we don't have to change it after we've already made the zip. We can change it right here, keep archive format zip, all the other settings the same, and then just press OK, and this will just generate a DRFX file for us. If you do this the traditional way with Windows or whatever computer OS you're using, you may have to just change the zip yourself, and you can just make sure that you can see the extension. I think up here we can go up to show and then file name extensions for Windows. It may be slightly different location on Windows 10 or whatever OS you're on, but there you go. We can double click this now, go back into DaVinci, and we're going to see it's going to want to install it. We're going to click install. We can then come into here, wait for it to reload because it'll have to actually refresh all of DaVinci. All right, once you see that things are moving again, we can come up here to templates. I have a lot of templates, so this is going to take a second to load. All right, that finally loaded. If we come up here to the search, I'm going to type in just character. We're going to see that 2 of them show up because one of these is the one from Reactor, one of them is the one we just installed. I'm going to drag either one in because it should be the exact same macro. We can see all of our inputs. If we hover over one of them, it tells us the name of the node it's on and whatever needs to be hooked into it. We can see we have our main transform with all of our transform options, with our icons, and we have all of these options really nice and easy for this macro. Hopefully this gave you a great introduction to using the new macro creator. If it didn't, be sure to watch Friday's video to learn more. Also, be sure to watch the stream that's happening just a little bit later on today to also get the very big introduction and also get your own copy of the new macro creator starting later on today. I'm excited to share this with you, but also nervous. Remember, I am just one guy. No one else has actually helped me code this, Some people have gave me assistance where assistance has been needed, but no one has actually been behind my back making sure everything I'm doing is up to par, everything's looking great, nothing's gonna be broken, or I don't have a second person to help me code things. If there's any bugs, please let me know. Don't be too worried, don't be too upset, hopefully. I'm gonna be fixing all of these bugs within either a month or however long they take, but I'll be putting out regular updates for this tool as more bugs and more issues are found, so this tool can be the best tool that it can be. I really want this to be an awesome tool that a lot of editors can use, even those who aren't familiar with macros from the original way. So I hope you're looking forward to it, and I'm glad that you guys are getting to see this. Have a great day. Happy animating.